Hey everybody, welcome back to my kitchen. Today I'm going to do something you guys have been asking me to do for quite some time. I've had all kinds of emails, private messages, Facebook, Instagram, people wanting me to show them how to can. I grew up in a family that canned their garden every year. Mom had humongous gardens. She put green beans, beets, apple butter, applesauce, peas, just about anything, corn. So I grew up canning and just thought it was normal that everybody did that. And as I was talking to some friends the other day, telling them I was going to start doing these, they're like, why would you can? Especially like today, we're going to can some pulled pork. Like, why would you can meat? Now, we're down in South Florida right now, so we get a lot of hurricanes and the electric goes off. We get a lot of storms during the summer and the electric goes off. That means my freezer goes off. I have a large freezer out in the carport area, and it is stocked full of food. When we get a hurricane or something comes through and we're without electric for more than 2 days, I start losing all that coldness in the freezer, and guess what? We start cooking everything. Or I'm trying to find ice. You can't find ice when the hurricanes went through and there's no electricity. So some of you up in the north, you're gonna have blizzards. Anywhere in the country, you're gonna lose power and you don't have electricity to run your freezer. You're gonna have food spoilage, you're gonna lose all that. So what you do is can the meats, can the vegetables, can your fruits. They're shelf stable for at least a year, a lot longer most of the time. But we're gonna go by the USDA recommendations. And that's what I'm going to advise you every time you can, any of my videos. You're going to need one thing majorly. It's the home canning guide from the USDA. I downloaded mine on Kindle. I get it every year. This one's the 2021 version. It's going to tell you the pressures you need to use. It's going to tell you how much you can put in. It's going to tell you how to cold pack or warm pack or hot pack. You follow their directions. These are the only directions you follow. If I say something a little bit different, don't go by what I say. That's what I've grown up doing. It's safe that I feel for my family, but not for yours. I want you to follow the USDA recommendations. If you're new to canning, if you're already canning, you guys know what you're doing. You don't have to, but this is the main book that you need to follow. If you don't, you can die. You will get food spoilage. You won't be able to tell it's spoiled. It could have botulism, other things growing in it. Even just a taste of some of these, just a small taste, can make you deathly ill. So always follow the guidelines and do exactly what they say. The other thing that you're going to want, and I've got all my stuff piled over here, is the book for your canner. I have a Presto canner. It's a 23 quart, and every canner is different. They're going to tell you how much water to put in here. Mine, this one says 3 quarts of water. You're not going to put 5 quarts in. You're not going to put 1 quart. You're going to do what your canner says. Some canners will say 3 inches of water, 1 inch of water. Do exactly what yours says because they're all different. And on that being different, all canners being different, let me show you why it took a long time for me to can. When I was younger, this is the canner my mom used. She also has one, probably taller than my Presto. It doesn't have a regulator gauge on it to tell you the pressure. All you have is this that pops around on top. I grew up with this thing popping and spitting, and the only problem I have with it is you need to vent your canner for 10 minutes of steam coming out, and I'll show you online. There's nowhere to vent it on here. This just has the weight on it, and the weight doesn't come off. So I don't trust this anymore. My mom loves it. She still uses hers. She's used it for so long. She knows how to use it. I'm instructing you guys to follow your canner guidelines. Don't use one of these if the gauge doesn't come off, because everything you can is going to take different pressures. 10 pounds of pressure, 15 pounds of pressure, and depending on your elevation. So you're going to want to look into that as well. The newer canners most of them have this regulator, so you can tell what pressure at the pressure gauge, and it has a steam vent. Now some only have the steam vent and the pressure relief valve that's over here. If you have the steam vent, you will have different size weights. So you may have a 10-pound weight, a 15-pound, and it doesn't mean they weigh 10 pounds or 15 pounds. It's 10 pounds of PSI pressure that it regulates to let out. So when this pressure canner gets up to 10 pounds of pressure, it's going to just sit here and shake a little bit. If it gets up to 12 or 13, it's going to start shaking lots, letting the steam out. It only holds it in to the pressure in it. So those will have a 10-pound weight or a 15-pound weight or a 5-pound weight. I've even seen those. You have to go by those if you do not have the gauge. So if you have one without a gauge and the recipe calls for 10 pounds of pressure, you'll let this vent for 10 minutes, then put on your weight and the 10-pound weight, and you're going to cook it for the amount of time for each one of the items. If you have a gauge on it, you're going to just, basically the USDA, everything I've read and everything I've seen, they go up one. So it said 10 pounds of pressure would be 11 pounds of pressure if you have a gauge. So 10 pounds if you don't have a gauge, 11 pounds if you do have a gauge. Oops. Okay, so actually, let me do this too since we're over here. Every time you can, you need to look through the vent pipe. Make sure you can see light through it and it's clean, and I can. Make sure your pressure valve is loose. There's also, I call it emergency pop off. If you get above a certain amount of pressure, this will pop out and that will keep it from exploding, which is what I always thought my mom's canners were gonna do. I didn't even like being in the kitchen. And then make sure there's nothing blocking here. Once you do that, you want to check your ring. Make sure that it's clean. Make sure there's no cracks in it. Should feel a little bit soft. Then put that back in. You're going to clean that every time you get done pressure canning. Take it out, clean it with soap and water, and put it back in after it dries. This is what's going to keep the pressure in your canner. Okay, so today, like I said, I'm doing pulled pork. I did a large pork butt in the slow cooker overnight for dinner, and obviously this is enough to feed me for 2 weeks probably, but we're going to put it to good use. I'm going to can it. So I've got my meat. I just took it out of here and shredded it. It's hot. I'm hot packing this, so you want everything hot. It's hot. I've still got the slow cooker on high, so the liquid that I'm going to put on it is hot. And I've got my jars over here in the canner, which I'll show you, and we want them to be hot too. So I already put my 3 quarts of water in my canner. There's also a line down in the canner that shows where to put it, the first line down there for 3 quarts. But I've also got the water inside each of these jars just a little bit, because if you put them in the water to heat up, they're going to start floating and bouncing around. So I usually put just enough water in to hold them down. And then when I take them out, I will dump it into here. I'm not going to dump it back into there because then I'm going to have more than 3 quarts in there. So I always leave my jars in here till I'm ready to fill them. I've got the lids here. They were simmering away. I like to make sure everything's nice and clean. So I'm putting water, clean it off. You could do it in the dishwasher, all your jars. Lids I always put in here and heat them up. That way the seal on the ring softens up a little bit so it'll seal. You're also going to want a debubbler and a magnet. I've got one that has one on each end. And what I also did is I marked on this one 1 inch for headspace and 1.5 inch, because everything you can is going to be a little different. This meat calls for 1 inch of headspace, so I can look at it and see 1 inch, and it's basically at the bottom of the rings here on the quart or pint jars. So I've already got that set up so it goes a little bit quicker. And then you want your jar remover so you don't burn yourself. So let me get one of my jars out here and we'll get started. I've got 10 of them in here. I'm probably not going to need 10 jars. And this is probably going to be too much water. But I'm going to get one of them out. Put this here. And let me get it over here closer to the meat. And I'm just going to fill this jar. I'm not going to pack it tight. I'm just going to fill it so we have about 1 inch of headspace. Pat them down. Okay, get a little bit more in there. And then I'm going to fill it with broth. Now you can can pork 3 ways. You can can it in the broth that it cooked in, you can can it with water, or you can can it with barbecue sauce, or you can it with nothing, just straight away. I like to put the broth in here It keeps it moist. And you're also only going to fill this to 1 inch of headspace too. So there we go. There's our first one. Put that away. I'm going to get another jar out. Dump the water in here so it's out of the way. And I'm going to get a lid with the magnet. Put it on. And one of these, I don't boil these. These are on the outside. We're going to go in the pressure canner, so it's going to sterilize it at the pressure and temperature. So the rings I never do. You can if you want, but I don't. And you're gonna just put these on finger tight. You don't want them real tight, just finger tight. And then I'm gonna put it back in here because I want to keep everything warm. And we'll get the next one. I'm gonna go through and fill all of these, and when we get done, I will show you where we're at. Okay, I've got everything done except the last one. I'm gonna bring you back for this last one, just to remind you of the process. I take out the hot jar that's been simmering over here, dump the water in here, not back in there. And for the hot jar, we will put in the hot meat. And we're going to pack it down lightly to about 1 inch of headspace. Looks like I'm making about 9 or 10 jars. I have to count what's in there. Ran out just about the right time. I got lucky on this one. Okay. That's about 1 inch of headspace. Got a few little nibbles in here. That's going to be for me to snack on here in a little bit. Let me get this out of the way. And we're going to take the broth, which looks like it came out just about right too. Ooh, warm. Bring it up to the 1 inch of headspace. Take our debubbler. Make sure you get out all the air bubbles. I don't know how I put this together, if I showed you me doing all these other ones or not, but if you noticed, in between each one or two, I go over and get a fresh paper towel to clean off the top of the vinegar. Like I said, you can see little drops of fat that when I poured that in there, and that will keep it from sealing well. So there they all cleaned off. We get our last lid. And we're going to just do this finger tight. Put it back in here. And we have all of our jars filled. I have 9 jars. Now, I got lucky because that's one full rack at the bottom. You can do, if your canner is large enough, more than one rack at a time. You can put in another divider. I don't know if I have my divider sitting here, but it'd be another, just like the one that's in the bottom, put it on top, then you put the next layer here. So this one's only gonna be 9 in here. Like I said, I put 3 quarts of water, and the water level has risen because I put the jars in it. And we're going to seal this up. So now I've got my 9 quarts in here. This leftover vinegar, I'm going to pour in. You don't have to, but I always pour like at least 2 tablespoons of vinegar in. That helps keep the jars from getting that white coating on the outside, which you can wash off. This just saves a step. So now my canner has a little mark here and one here, little V. Just line those up, close it, and got turned up to high. I'm going to let this pressure cook and pressure cooker heat up until steam starts coming out of here. Once the steam starts coming out at a steady stream, we're going to time it for 10 minutes, and then I will put the pressure regulator on top of it that came with my canner. Do not use different ones for different canners. This one is for this Presto. You don't want to use it on the Miro. They have different weights. They have different, just always follow your canner's advice. Always use what came with your canner. Don't Don't buy something different and think it's gonna work. So always be safe. So these are gonna, after it comes up to temperature and steams for 10 minutes, I'm going to put the weight on, cook them for 75 minutes for pints. If they were quarts, I'd cook them for 90 minutes. Once they're done cooking, I will let them depressurize on their own. Once it does depressurize, I'm just gonna pop the lid open and let it sit there for about 10 minutes. That's gonna keep the jars from going into shock from the cold air coming from the hot pressure cooker, which can cause seepage. Some of your fluid can come out or suck air in and they're not gonna seal well. So I'll bring you back when we get the steam coming out. Okay, everybody, as you can see, we've got a steady stream coming up out of the vent. You see water splashing all over the place, dirtying up the top of my canner. So we are at 0 pounds of pressure, of course, because all this pressure's coming out. So I'm going to start the timer now for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to put the weight on it, and we'll be back. Okay, so I'm back. This has been steaming for just about 10 minutes. I should be hearing my alarm soon. Once I hit the 10-minute mark, I'm going to put the weight on the pressure release and let it build up to temperature. There's my 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to put this on. I'm going to watch the gauge because right now I have it on high. It's going to increase fairly quickly. The fuller you have the pressure cooker, the longer it's going to take to come up to pressure. But I want to get it above 12. And then I'm going to reduce it on my stove. I found on this stove and on this burner, just around the number 4, my dials go from low and then 2, 4, 6, 8 high. Everyone's is different. So you're going to find that sweet spot on your stove. And mine, usually about 4, will keep me a pressure at about 10 or actually 11 on this. So you see the weights bouncing a little bit. We're already up to about 3 pounds of pressure. When it gets up past 11, which I'm going for 11 pounds of pressure, then I'll reduce this, and you do not want to leave the pressure cooker unattended while it's cooking. You want to stay in the kitchen. If you go do something, come back, keep an eye on it. You don't want it to go below the pressure that's recommended for whatever you're cooking. So this is, with this gauge, I'm cooking this at 11 pounds of pressure. If it goes below 11, I need to start the process all over, because you got to keep the pressure, which is the temperature, at that constant rate to safely can the food. So that's why you want to stay in the kitchen. I just clean, do some odds and ends in here, maybe look at some recipes, and keep an eye on it so it stays above 11 pounds of pressure. I do change the dial a couple times, I've noticed. So it just depends on everyone's stove, and you'll get used to it once you start canning for a while. But remember, go by the USDA guidelines. You can get this book on, I downloaded it for my Kindle. It's an iPad, but I have Kindle on here. I'll put a link down below where you can get this. I think it was only $4, and it can save your life. This is going to tell you how to do everything correctly. So you can either download it on your Kindle or you can buy it. I think they were $8 or $9. I'm not sure. I'll have to look. I'll put a link down below where you can get it, and make sure you go buy your guide for your pressure canner. How much water? A lot of people have the ball canning, home preserving. They think this is the all-to when it comes to canning. Has great recipes. I've noticed some of them, the pressures and the times and things are sometimes a little bit different than the USDA guidelines. So always go by that. This is good for recipes. Once you start canning enough, you'll get to know your canner. I'm already up to 10, so it's increasing pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and take it down to about 6, because I don't want it to go too fast and too far up. Just about to 11. Actually, I'm going to leave it about 7 so it stays heating. So I'm just about right at 11. I'm going to keep it there or a little bit above it. Do not go under it. If you do, you're going to have to start all over. So I'll be back in about 75 minutes, because that's what we're going to do for pints. If it was quarts, we do 90 minutes. I'll see you in a little bit. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, we're back. The 75 minutes is up. I've turned off the heat. I'm letting it reduce the pressure on its own. You don't do anything, don't touch it. Let it go till this little pressure gauge drops down. Once that drops down, you know the pressure is relieved. You can take off the weight. and then we'll open the canner, and we're going to just kind of open it, put the lid at an angle, let it try to get a little bit temperature equalized in there for about 10 minutes. It's real important that you do that, because if you don't do that, you're going to have issues with the jars not sealing correctly, and they could get some seepage where it lets some of the juice out that's in there, or sucking air in, they won't seal. I went back and I listened to, because I had to check something, so I watched the video, and if I sound like I was preaching, I'm sorry. This is real important. The canning it's a great thing to do. It's easy to do. I grew up with it, like I said, but if you do it wrong, you can have ill effects, and we don't want that. So I showed you the book that I got on Amazon that I downloaded on Kindle. You can buy it there. You can also, on your computer or your iPad, and I can't use my iPad right now because I'm recording on it, but on your iPad, sorry about that noise, we've got a big storm coming through right now. But you go to the National Center for Home Preservation, has all of the sections that are in that book are here free. They're in PDF format. And if you go to my website, which I'll put a link right here, it's gregs-kitchen.com. Most of you probably already know that. And under my canning, if you go there, you will see that the very first thing I have on here is a link to that website. So if you can't remember what it is, you're not sure, just go to my website, search canning, and it's going to be there. I will have it on every recipe that I put on my website, every recipe that I put on YouTube. There'll always be that link there for you. So I want you to follow that. Once you've been canning for a while, you'll have it, you'll know what you're doing. Like my mom, she probably has never even seen that website. Mom's probably never even seen the ball canning book. She's been doing it for so long because her mom taught her, her grandma taught her. My Aunt Carol, I used to can with her. They all know what they're doing. They didn't have this equipment that we have now that helps keep us safe. They had, like I showed you, the other canner, and they just knew what they were doing. They knew how long it had to go. They could time it from different times, when they were canning, that they learned how to can. So make sure you go to that link on my website if you have any questions, or it's going to be down below in the description, and I'll be back when we open up the canner. Okay guys, the pressure has down to 0 on the pressure gauge, but do not go by that. You have to wait till the little pressure stopper pop goes down. Once it goes down, all the pressure is released inside. You can safely take off the gauge. There's nothing coming out, or the weight of the gauge. And this is where we're just going to pop the top open. Whoa! Are you freaking serious? You just scared the shit out of me. Okay, so all the pressure is now released. The gauge is down to 0, but don't go by that. You have to wait till the little stopper goes down, shows all the pressure is released. So then you can take off the weight and open the lid and open it away from you, let the steam out. And then just set it down. And we're gonna leave it sit like that for about 10 minutes to let the temperature equalize so the jars don't have any seepage or anything. And I'll be back as soon as we take out the jars. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes. I'm going to get the lid off and pull out our jars. It smells wonderful. It smells like pulled pork in here. Just be careful of taking those out. There shouldn't be any steam now because it's been sitting for 10 minutes and all the heat's come out. And now we're just going to let them sit for 12 to 24 hours. We're going to listen for that popping noise, telling us the jars are sealed. I don't push down on them now, testing them, because you could push down and it would seal partially, and it could be a false seal. You want it to do it on its own as it's cooling. So there are all 9. I'll show you up close. They're still boiling inside from the temperature. There you go. We got 9 jars of pulled pork, just left over from the roast I did earlier today, or the pork shoulder. When you get done and everybody's sealed, you can take the rings off. Do take the rings off, because No, somebody just popped. Take the rings off so you don't get a false seal and it's holding against it, because you can get mold and bacteria and anything growing down in there and you may not even see it. So we're going to let these sit and seal. Once they've all sealed, tomorrow I'll check them, take off the rings, and they're ready to store. So there's our canned pulled pork, and I'll be doing chicken and some vegetables later, and I'll be posting those as well. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.